Hey everyone, welcome back to another KiteCast episode. We have a real treat today. Eddie Doyle from Checkpoint Software is joining us. Eddie is a security strategist and keynote speaker at Checkpoint Software. Prior to his current role, he served in several different roles at the company, starting in 2016, or at least the latest assignment. He can tell us about the two forays that he's had at Checkpoint, actually, as we delve into the conversation today. He spent time at other cybersecurity companies such as McAfee, spends most of his current time in his existing role engaging with boards of directors and executive teams, helping them to solve cybersecurity challenges in an engaging manner. Eddie was a competitive track athlete. We need to talk about that today, and holds degrees from the Manchester Metropolitan University and Brighton Met and Northbrook College. Eddie, thanks for joining Tim and me today. We're looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie.
Quite all right. And there's a little correction to my bio there, only because, as you can already tell by my accent, I'm not the Bronx, New Yorker that you think I am.
Or from Texas.
Yeah, in England, we finish. Hey, what's that?
Or from Texas.
Yeah, or from Texas. I have spent half my life in North America, but yeah, growing up in England, we do these diplomas. They aren't university degrees. But having said that, yeah, and a foray into English language before I got into technology. But at any rate, you're my host, so let me know where you would like to take the direction of the conversation.
So, competitive athlete, you still do some of that today? Do some running?
Nah, yeah, in my dreams. I'm still running. So running was a thing for me from a very early age. I just ran home from school from about age, I don't know, 6 or 7, and I was running ever since. So that's my therapy, right? That's where I get to work out all my trauma is on the pavement. So that's that's good for me. But no, my hobbies today are riding a Harley Davidson like a good American boy.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about your role. Good, Tim.
Just about. Did you say you're in the UK now, or you reside in the US? I might have missed that.
No, so I left the UK when I was just turned 21 years old for adventure, and adventure is to be had in North America, my friends. You guys are having way too much fun out here, so I stayed, and so that was 30 years ago.
Oh, got it. All right.
You never know. I was at a gas station in Germany on the Autobahn a few years ago, and a guy on a big Harley pulled up, but I think he was from the Air Force, U.S. Air Force Base. So you never know where you'll see one pull up.
Right. Well, all my friends out here have the Triumphs because they're buying the British classics, but
Yeah.
I'm a British guy in America, right? So let's go Harley. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your role over at Checkpoint and what you do. This latest assignment, I think, dates back to 2018, and you've actually been with the company in 2 different stints. Interested in hearing, what you did originally and how you came back, because the role changed, I think, dramatically over time.
Yeah, well, so, I fell into cybersecurity with Checkpoint, as a matter of fact. I mean, prior to that, I was working in the raised floor data center space. And so this was 2007. And so if you recall, in the industry around 2000, well, you see, in the early 2000s, us IT guys went out to the CFOs and said, hey, give me a big pile of cash. I need to build a data center because I've got all these servers and I didn't know we were going to have them. Yeah, this is just on after the dot-com boom, right? And it went bust. But we needed all these servers to host all this space. So CFOs gave, $5 million, go build me a data center. But then what happened is Moore's Law, right? We created super fast computers, blade computing came in. So my data center was physically half empty, but I was using all the juice. So all the power, all the cooling was being sucked by these 3 racks now. And so I got into that game for a little while. It was basically say, well, look, instead of wasting your money, you're now retrofitting the power and cooling to a room in a high rise, which is jolly expensive. Let's outsource all this stuff. So that was the beginning of us, the industry, taking our very precious machines and moving them to data centers, somebody else's physical building. And so as part of that evaluation, the physical building was evaluated, but then threat actors just got in, straight through the ether. And so we're okay, great. You've got really good redundancy for power and cooling. I don't think Spider-Man's breaking in through this window. It's pretty good security here, right? But all of a sudden, some kid with keystrokes on the other side of the planet just stole everything. What? So that was my first sort of introduction to, okay, that's interesting. How did that happen? And then Checkpoint Software at the same time, of course, really the story goes, in North America, you had John McAfee, right, building antivirus for endpoint. And that was in the actually, that was the early 1990s. That's how early that was. And then you had Gil Schwed tinkering around in Israel building network security. And again, that was the late 80s, early 90s. So fast forward a decade to the early 2000s, these guys had established gigantic companies. I got pulled into cybersecurity on the network security side because that was where I just happened to have fallen in data center raised floor spaces and trying to figure out a solution, really a solution to a financial problem, because the tech guys at that point, well, we're not well versed in finance, right? I mean, it's just, hey, we need all these servers and I'm going to hook them up for you. And prior to that, I was just putting printers and copy machines and coffee machines together. So that person really didn't have an understanding of finance. The CFO doesn't have a clue about IT. And these two worlds came together and, a lot of money was earned and spent. So I got into the network security business because, well, as I said, because people started stealing stuff through keystrokes, and I was very much interested in how to prevent this. And so Gil at the company Checkpoint first hired me, and I was working in sales and marketing. And then I left to do a startup in the Valley, a cloud access security broker. I've just been very much interested in, shiny new objects, shall we say, right? The bleeding edge of innovation. And what I've discovered from that, actually, that passion of mine, because I bounced out after a year and went back to Checkpoint, and that's because it's a furious world at the bleeding edge. It's where all the fun is. But when it comes to security, it's funny. I was talking to some military guys about this just last week. The standards are very different. We can afford to play. Well, having said that, not really, because I'm still thinking of 2008 today with the kind of ransomware attacks that we get. The word play is a little too casual for for people that have a severe consequence to somebody engaging in keystrokes across the other side of the planet. But I will say that there is a difference between what the Department of the Defense requires and what industry is pushing to attain. So, that's what got me into this world. I'm interested in the innovation. At the edges of innovation is absolute creativity, but at the same time, there is vulnerability. One of the mantras for Gil Schwed has always been, if security isn't simple, it isn't followed, right? If it's complex, people will find a way around it.
Yeah.
And, guys, interrupt me because I can talk, but I'm just about to jump into the problem we have with passwords. That's complicated. And so people found a way around it. And so what is it? 81% of breaches in 2022 came from a phishing attack. And that's because threat actors know that I just need to get that password, and then I probably got the password to everything.
Yeah. Tim, I think you brought up a topic of the DoD and so forth, a topic that's close to our heart. I suspect you're about to ask him about CMMC.
Yeah, and just in general, I noticed, I think what you were referring to, you went to is it GIST Summit? Is that or GIST?
That's right.
GIST, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing what fell out of that, what the government and the speakers you were with. It looks like folks from the DEA, the Navy, Department of Labor, where their heads at in terms of the next year, 2, 3, 4, however far out you want to look, and how that contrasts to what you're hearing in the commercial space. Are there similarities? Are they in different universes, the government versus the commercial space when it comes to security and innovation? Just if you could springboard off of that, I'm interested in hearing.
So I was there for the morning. I can let you know what the public addresses were in the morning. And I was on the panel with the Navy. Prior to that, the gentleman who keynoted the event was the CISO for the US Army.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really took away that was very strong is sort of similar to that philosophy that I just mentioned, I just touched on. When you are at the bleeding edge of innovation, it's actually quite an insecure place, ironically, right? Considering we're building security products. And one thing the general is a general who, I forget his name off the top of my head, who gave the address at the beginning. He said, industry provides products that will find the threat that's happened, and it will remediate the problem, and then we'll carry on as normal. These are my words, not his. Whereas he said, what we require in the military is, okay, you found the threat, remediate, but fail forward. So, in other words, and it's a really interesting philosophy, and I think he's right about this, because as manufacturers, what we're trying to do is, let's say, for example, you have ABC Bank, okay? And ABC Bank takes security very seriously. And so ABC Bank gets a breach, all right? We detect it, we isolate it, right? And we contain the damage right there. And if you've done your zero trust architecture effectively, well done, right? Now, unfortunately, you had the breach, but it has been contained. If you've done zero architecture correctly, it's been contained. Or MITRE or most of these kinds of standards. All right, brilliant. But whereas the Army says, okay, we found it, we've contained it, but now we need to respond. We're the military. Right, so that's different from us. We clean up and we're done. So this actually takes me back to a talk I did at, it was for the Journal of Law and Cyber Warfare with a bunch of military judicators. And this point actually came up because if, for example, you're working at ABC Bank and one of your competitors is stealing your customer information or trying to, and some young kid on your team decides, I can stop this, I'll just throw a honeypot out there and we'll watch what happens. And if that honeypot works and it detonates on that competitive bank that was stealing your information, you just broke the law. Right? You're not allowed to do that. That was under Reagan. You're not allowed to break into somebody else's computers, like breaking into their house. I forget the name of the law, but that was established way back in the 80s. So this is a really interesting area now because industry already actually does this, doesn't it? I mean, we have about 300 or 400 what we call offensive cyber operators who sit in our Tel Aviv office. And what they do is they go onto the dark web every day and they take on the persona of an avatar of a terrorist or a criminal, somebody like that that's just going to hang around in the dark web. And then they befriend these threat actors. Well, why? And the reason we do it is simply because we want to be a millisecond ahead of what's going on. And so when they're out on the dark web in cyberspace there, and think about this should blow your minds, only 4% of the internet is indexed.
I heard a
Google.
stat like that recently as well.
Right?
It's amazing.
Now, a lot of it is intranet. So that's an alarming statistic that is manipulated the wrong way by people in cybersecurity, right? Because the majority of it is actually intranet. So that's not bad. That's not threat actors. That's me at the checkpoint intranet, and you're not allowed there, right? So that's not indexed either. So that does include that. And there's a lot of that. But it does open your eyes a little bit to how busy it is on the dark web, right? Sure. And so what these folks will do is they'll take on these conversations with threat actors in the dark web. I'll give you a good story if you've got time for one, guys. And by all means, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, no.
You're pulling me back to the question.
Before you go into the story, though, and I do want to hear it, and it's because that's what makes for a good podcast. Sure. You said something interesting, which I haven't heard yet in any of our podcasts, and we talk a lot about how cybersecurity is losing to some degree, and that we're the industry is always on the defensive, sort of protect crap. They got in, now get back online, protect. But what I heard was protect, defend. Now go on the offensive and go and sort of counterstrike into the bad actor's home, if you will. Is that what I heard?
To be clear.
Yeah.
To be clear, that was a response to what was the theme of the GIST conference. And what I was understanding, to answer your question, from the military is industry creates products and services that do not go on the offensive.
Yes, right. And they should.
Right. And so then I brought up the fact that I was at a Journal of Law and Cyber Warfare symposium. And the reason they don't is because we will break the law if we go on the offensive. So we actually can't do that legally.
I see.
So what I'm presenting is a predicament that is very interesting from a philosophical perspective that the general brought up in his keynote address. And then I can certainly just to round out actually what those morning discussions was about. I was on a panel that morning speaking with the Navy. I think a hot topic of conversation is certainly, so if you this is interesting, right? This is the first time in human history where the citizenry, it's not the first time in human history. It's the largest time in human history where the citizenry can influence war. I'll give you a side note example. When Russia first invaded the Ukraine last year, Zelensky realized he was going to have a cyber battle. So, as part of his response to that cyber battle, he sent out an appeal saying, "Hey, if anybody could help me, because it's us against Russia, so the whole world, please help me." Right? One of these 200,000 people signed up to a Telegram account in a week.
Mm.
400,000 people within a month. Now, these are citizens around the world. It's like, excuse me, what are you doing? Right? You've picked a side. I'm not questioning whether you should or shouldn't. I'm questioning that you did and that you're weighing in on a war. This is very strange. And so, in a similar predicament, the military leans on private industry and manufacturers such as ours and says, well, let's get into business. Let's buy some of your products. Let's make them work. And so, to the largest extent that we've ever seen before in history, because you take an event like World War II, Ford Motor Company is simply told, "Hey, go build tanks now. You're not building cars anymore." And they just go, "Okay." And then 4 years later, 3 years later, "Okay, we're done that. We're carrying on building cars." This is different. This is a continual relationship. And it's different from a Lockheed Martin that's very specialized. I'm going to make you an F-18. And all the employees are going to be super secret and blah, blah, blah. And this is the only thing I'm doing for you with this entire department, and off you go. Well, it's not like that with any of these vendors, right? Cybersecurity vendors. So it's an interesting dynamic and relationship. And I think that was the main theme, Tim, to sort of finish off your question there of what came out of our dialogue. Because how do we put these two very diverse groups, the military and citizenry and publicly traded companies that are absolutely for profit in their and have to be, right, in their motivation, and how do we marry that with patriotism for a country? There you go.
Sure.
So that was part of the challenge of it. I'll pause there because there's a few directions I think we could go.
Well, there, you started also talking about I don't know how large the team is, but the team in overseas that
Tel Aviv.
swims the dark web in Tel Aviv that swims the dark web, pretending to be part of the bad guy universe. And what's the outcome? What's the game plan there for Checkpoint with what happens? Is it threat intelligence? Is it alerting the government and the commercial entity sectors to be aware of X, Y, and Z because we've seen it from the inside? What's the path?
All right. So several reasons. I'll save the sexy one for last because that'll be the story, which I think you'll love.
Okay.
I tell this one a lot. People like it. Well, certainly. So the first thing is what we want to do is we want to get threat intelligence. So we want to have ears to as close to the ground as possible, and the ground is the dark web. And so this is where these people fly, and it's a horrible world in there too, by the way, when you start looking in that direction. We want to alert industry of vulnerabilities before threat actors find them, right? So we want to find a 0 day. We're searching for a holy grail here too, right?
Mhm.
We're having fun, but we're searching for that. I say we. I'm not going on the dark web, right? These are very specialist people, and I do not recommend it either. Everything I ever need is indexed in Googleable, right? I never go on the dark web, right? No need to. So they are informing and working with industry. We found some very severe vulnerabilities in Microsoft recently. We find them often in Microsoft,
Right.
Facebook, WhatsApp. These are the big culprits, right? Culprits, kind of an interesting way to put that. I shouldn't have said it that way. I think these are the big
They're the targets.
targets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
See, and so we'll find severity rated 10 vulnerabilities at Microsoft mildly recently, and people can get these for free. Our competitors can pick them up for free. By the way, just go to blog.checkpoint.com, and they're there. Actually, this is a research group called research.checkpoint.com. They're really cool. Those are the offensive cyber operators who hack the hackers, right, as it were. Then the other thing that we are doing, of course, is we are looking for how people create threats. So we're looking for how people create what they're doing with code. Now, this is way outside of my. As soon as they start talking code, I love hanging with these guys in Tel Aviv. They're freaky and weird and scary. But when they start talking code, I'm like, I see you later. I'm out of there. But so they're looking for code that has vulnerability, but they're also looking for new types of attack. Okay, so here was one. This is the fun story. You are familiar with the manufacturer. I believe it was LG. This is public information,
Sure.
so they can go to the blog. But I just certainly forgive me if it wasn't LG, but I'm 99% sure it is. So LG makes this robot vacuum cleaner. You know, like the Roomba. It looks like a gigantic disc, and it goes around your house, right? And the cat rides on it,
Yeah.
and it's basically more of a gimmick than anything. I don't know that it's ever really done a good job vacuuming my carpet. I have one, not the LG. And so just bear that in mind, LG vacuum cleaner. All right. So the team is on the dark web and they find something for sale that looks nefarious. All right. This is what they're interested in. It was maps, but not like topology maps of geography out there outside that we would use to navigate somewhere. Maps of buildings, categorized. Here are maps of homes of high net worth individuals, but not all the information. It was an advertisement. Here are maps of buildings of certain industries like aviation. It's kind of interesting. So, what is this? Why are these maps for sale? They're just for sale on the dark web. And so, with a little bit of investigation, actually, unfortunately, our team got pointed out. So, oftentimes, because this is the game for these threat actors, they'll know that it's either spooks, right? Because obviously, our intelligence services, as well as those of other countries, are doing this. We are likely not the only cybersecurity company that does this. And so the threat actor figured, this is not a legitimate customer. Because what we'll try to do is we'll try to pretend, we're interested in buying this. What's it for, right? And then that person will reveal a bit more information. Anyway, so what my team did is reverse engineered to find out how this person got this information and why. The LG vacuum cleaner at the time had cameras in it. Cameras, like actual cameras, not just sensors, but cameras to see cameras. Why? It's mind blowing to me. The other thing the LG camera, yeah, it's a gigantic camera. The LG vacuum cleaner did is, and this is cool. It maps your room for efficiency on the battery, right? That's a good thing. So it's trying to get okay,
I
go
see.
this way, go that way, so I can be more efficient and plug myself back
Mhm.
in. Now, where do these maps go? And this is the thing that when customers ask this, what do I do with all this big data? I'm like, do you use it? No, delete it. They can't. They won't delete it. Of course, it's money. We store all these cat videos and people's pictures of people's food because somebody thinks they're going to make money out of it one day. So all of these maps are being sucked up to LG's cloud, and unfortunately, that was hacked. This was quite a few years ago, and you can read about this in research.checkpoint.com. So you're not a cybersecurity company. If you're going to keep this kind of stuff, this vital information, be careful. And why? Why is that helpful? Well, at the time, El Chapo, who was the drug lord, the Mexican drug cartel, was on trial in New York. It would be useful to have a map of the jury's house or the judge, right? A map of a billionaire's house where their children sleep at night. These are horrible things. And so this is what they're doing. They're going there to look for where are the latest threats and vulnerabilities. And then we have 24 hours. It's called, there's a name for it. It's a responsible disclosure. So just like a bug bounty program, in a sense, you have 24 hours to responsibly disclose the vulnerability you found. I'm pleased to tell you that, and this is true for Facebook and WhatsApp that I mentioned earlier, and Microsoft, all of these companies work very well with us. We get the occasional company that thinks they're going to get sued or some such, but we're there to help. And so then typically our sales team rush in, they'll make a buck, right? But we'll help them, we'll fix all that stuff up for them, and we go along with our day. So that's why our teams are doing this for a living.
It's actually amazing how creative the hackers can get in context like that, because usually it's PII, it's PCI, it's all the P's and I's of sensitive information. But to see the angle with Roomba-like recordings of floor plans and to put that on the black market and market it in a way that could be used by more bad people. It's where does it, no one can be proactive in that situation. I'm sure LG thought they had the least sensitive data in coming out of
Yeah,
that vacuum that they could think
yeah,
of, right?
right.
You know?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it ties into what you asked me earlier about people thinking that we're losing the battle. We're not. A chief information security officer needs to be right 100% of the time. A threat actor only needs to be right 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of companies are not hacked. So guess what? We're winning
Right. I
by
mean,
far,
it's
by
one of
far,
those
by
things
far.
where, what is win, what is loss, but I think the conversation is just around, can it come to a head where it's just eventually, um, the rate and the amount and the value goes down because it continues to go up. There's more hacks, there's more password, to your earlier comment, there's more passwords leaked every day than there ever has been before. It just seems to keep increasing. Now you could probably make an angle for that. Well, there's more business and there's more people and there's more of everything. So of course that's going to go up as well. But it just, I think, to the common cybersecurity team or professionals, the outlook looks like the hockey stick is not going in a lot of our favors, so to speak.
Well, this in a moment, I think, therefore, would be a great segue into blockchain and AI,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where we're going to be saved, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into it, though, if you go to that research site where they even have they took hold of this vacuum cleaner and drove it into our CEO's office and turned their camera on. It's a good fun video. So within 24 hours, what my colleagues did is made this quick video, posted it, and then called LG and fixed all the problems. But that's a good
Tim can
story
turn his
because
LG
it's a
vac
bit
back on now.
sensational.
Yeah.
What's
Tim can
that?
turn his LG vac back on now.
I do have
Yeah,
the
exactly. I know.
I do have the
Everybody's putting a
Roomba.
piece of Everyone's putting a little bits of duct tape on the cameras. That's the best security they're
Yeah.
going to come up with until then. Yeah. No, it's a sensational story. So I think, Tim, you're right in your response to have alarm to the fact that there are dreadful people looking at such things, thinking of something that you would never have thought of. It's a beautiful response of a good man. Look, this is the way it's going. So on that same website, the research.heaven, you're going to, if you do a search on, I think cyber kingpin is what my colleague Oded Van Unu called it. And Oded put a very painstaking amount of research from the dark web together on, like, how do these cybercrime syndicates, and I use the word syndicate because of this article, like, how does all this come about? Because, Tim, to your point, somebody didn't actually come up with the idea of, oh, I should get the map of, some billionaire's kid's house. No, that's not how it works. Some immoral, certainly, but childishly stupid but talented kid is on the dark web looking for vulnerabilities and finds one in, let's say, LG. Okay, fine. I'm just going to penetrate. I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
this. I'm just
whatever's
going to
on the
go
other
and
side. Yeah.
right. I'm just an idiot kid that's just stealing stuff because I'm a horrible human being. But I'm not that evil. And then I found a bunch of maps, and it's like, oh, I'll just take them and I'll sell them online for $5. Really, this is what these dumb, right? This is what they're doing. So they'll sell it for a couple of bucks. They don't know what to do with it. Like, I found it. Now, like mafia, these syndicates, these guys are out buying this stuff. They're the ones that weaponize it, right?
Mm.
So what you've got is you've got a few psychopaths, because there's only a few percent of people that are psychopaths around the world who are looking for this, and they're the ones that are creating it. So what happens, and what Oded managed to show was, when the psychopath sees that, he goes, okay, I'm going to start a campaign, and let's just separate it into a less sensationalized one now, right? The things that we deal with all the time. Okay, I'm going to, I want to do ransomware. So what the psychopath does is says, okay, the first thing I need is a good phishing email. And it turns out that these people they don't work like a corporate structure like us in a pyramid, but it seems kind of like that, because this person at the top of the pyramid just outsources the phishing. I need great wording for a phishing attack in France, targeting executive people at finance. And literally, that person will have a smorgasbord of things to choose from.
Sure.
For, again, not much money. And now with ChatGPT, it's like, wow, okay. But although I did ask ChatGPT to write me a phishing attack ask as Melinda Gates asking Bill Gates for money because I forgot my wallet. It was terrible. It was terrible. So we're okay. We're okay for now. ChatGPT. So it really, it was an awful phishing email. But what they'll do though is they'll find these phishing emails. Okay, that's the phishing guy. That guy gets their piece of Bitcoin. Fine. Now what I need is I need a target list. So that threat actor will find, like the psychopath will find a target list. And they'll pay some Bitcoin for that, etc., etc., etc. Right, until they're in and they're watching and they need malware and off they go. But what we're finding is they're very well organized, and they'll get resources in Australia, mostly Eastern Europe, some Asia, right? We see these kinds of Africa, of course, but all over the place, these cybercrime syndicates come together. And so that's how I think it happens. And then a nasty person figures out how to do something with it.
Right.
Um,
My
while we,
concern there
yeah,
with that organization is that it just gets scale again because they don't have law, they don't have any rules, right? So it's organized in a totally ruleless operation, whereas the good guys, we have to be organized within the confines of the law. And when you have no confines, it's easier to innovate. And with
yeah,
things like AI and Chat GPT, I mean, the thing is the founders of ChatGPT don't even know why it does what it does. They just know they have created a large language model with the data of the universe behind it, but they still don't know why when you ask it a question it produces what it produces. But there's
what do you mean by that? I don't understand. What, they don't know why it does.
they have I was at a conference, or not a conference but a presentation by one of the founders, and a lot of what they're doing now is trying to figure out why it's producing the words in the order that it is. All they know is that it's going to the vector database based on your input, and it's looking at the data that should be the next word that it should give you based on the question you gave. But in what order and why it's different when you ask the same question, in at different points, they don't quite understand why it's doing that. So
Hmm.
there's this whole evolution right now. It's called prompt engineering, which is this is a long way of me getting to a point where how you ask what you ask is as sophisticated today in this particular dynamic as computer engineering was 30, 40 years ago, where you had to learn different types of computer language. Now you have to learn how to prompt large language models with natural language, but you have to do it in a way that gets the output that you're looking for. And if you can do that, and then if you're the bad guys and you can scale, for instance, your phishing email, same request put in the hands of some incredibly talented prompt engineer in Russia would probably come up with not just one but an entire library of phishing emails that he could then syndicate to that organized band of brothers to essentially launch into into the universe. And my concern is the scale behind that, and I just think
Mm.
we're just scratching the surface of what AI and large language models can
Yeah.
do for bad guys.
But
And I
Eddie
think
thinks
one of
that
our
the
largest,
the fix may be with AI and
And
blockchain.
I heard that, so I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on the other side. How we could be.
well, blockchain for sure. And I did mention AI too there, didn't I? But blockchain is really what I meant. And yeah, yeah, you just got me really thinking about what you just said with AI. That's truly amazing. The, I think one of the largest challenges for us in the industry is you know what you see. You see scale coming now. We've got all these threat
Right.
actors right attacking us. We have to be right 100% of the time. We can't be asleep once, right? And all of a sudden, a scale problem is coming because of supercomputing. That's what we're attempting to articulate now. Blockchain, the first thing I like to say is think of it this way: blockchain is eating the internet. It's kind of a strange thing to say, and it doesn't really mean much, only it gives you an analogy that blockchain is the monster and the internet is inferior. And you think that the internet is, I like to say, the printing press on steroids,
Hmm.
right? And so think about what the internet did to us. Blockchain will outdo that. And so that's the best way I can come up with grabbing people's attention. That's my hook right into it. And Here I'm going to struggle because who can speak effectively about artificial intelligence or blockchain, right? These are tough things. But what I will say is we've now created the most secure computer system in the world for recording data, and it is entirely open.
Yeah.
It is such an irony,
Mm.
it blows my mind.
Yep.
I love it.
It is
So there are
incredible. Yeah.
now, yeah, so full nodes. I think I've got this right. There are now 20,000 full nodes. So 20,000 computers have a full ledger of every blockchain transaction on Bitcoin.
On
That
Bitcoin.
is,
Yeah.
on Bitcoin. Yes.
Yeah.
That it's like, how are you ever going to destroy that? So now I started thinking, and I think especially with guys, we're going to have to say it, the culture wars, because of the dynamic in the discourse of um, our political climates in the West, because they are so furious with, I actually don't even know what's true anymore, right? I mean, really, we called it early on misinformation, right? And now the blue check mark has become the holy grail of it's me speaking, because with the deep fake, is it deep
Yeah.
fake
Deep
with the
fake. Yeah.
video? Yeah, yeah. We're talking so much about all these new words with deep fake now, and with, of course, your own, Twitter accounts that don't even have video on them. We are going to constantly challenge authenticity, right? We don't trust our leadership, and nor should we. Look how embarrassing our political leaders are, right? We don't trust the discourse from our media, and nor should we. They've lied to us, and we know it. And so now we've got a generation coming up saying, well, I hear you saying that, but I don't know who to trust anymore. So now we are going to have a discussion about authenticity in a way that we've never had it before. And the authenticity needs to come first from the individual. So I think sovereignty, and we're sort of getting outside of the dynamic of cyber here, so pull me back in. But I think sovereignty to the individual on a blockchain, so that they can keep what's most precious to them secure, and then as a collective in our companies that we currently protect with all of these amazing tools and incredible things that we vendors have made for them, we are going to somehow have to authenticate them using blockchain. We're going to have to authenticate the experience of using our technologies through blockchain somehow. This is what our CTOs are going to have to come up with.
Yeah, I don't think you're too far off. It's just kind of interesting how long it's taken to get. I mean, it's people who are not certain with they don't understand what blockchain is. I'll say it that way. And so
Yeah.
when you really have to dig in, you have to spend hours upon hours to understand truly what's going on there. And so there's trust problems with from the cybersecurity side. There's trust problems with the people side. But once you get past the trust problems on both of those, it truly is probably the only infrastructure where you can be absolutely certain Tim is Tim, this computer is this computer, whatever you want to put on the blockchain in all of its many different forms. It's just people are uncertain with what it is, and so they haven't moved there collectively, right? Like the Ethereum blockchain, we're getting off Bitcoin, but that's just a blockchain of contracts, right?
Right.
That's all it is, and it's there. You can't once that contract is on the blockchain, it's as good as gold. It's set in stone, right? And you can't tamper with it. So if you think about things that you could put on a blockchain, people's passwords, their identity, all those types of things, if it's impenetrable because of its decentralized and you have to validate it from X number of nodes, and there's real power in protecting the citizens and their data privacy in that
Yeah.
model.
I'm annoyed with myself because I can't yet tie it to what we need to do today. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's all very well that this, because, so I'll give you a great example. I live in New Jersey, so what you can do with the blockchain, just to help people understand that. I live in New Jersey, and I cannot hate the Department of Motor Vehicles enough. Okay? All right. There's no need to have them. There's no need to
This
have
is
the
true.
Department of Motor
Yeah,
Vehicles.
it doesn't make any sense.
I can register my car to the blockchain, and
Yeah.
every time I have an oil change, every time it gets in an
Yep.
accident, every time I do anything to it, it's
Registered.
registered. Now, that cannot be stolen. So now
Right.
the DMV, which likely has the weakest cybersecurity ever, and has my personal information, my driving license, my driving history, my insurance documents. I'm an immigrant, so it's got my green card information. It's got, right?
Mhm.
It's got all social security for every American. And that's sitting behind a firewall at a DMV. And if you've met a DMV employee, you're not going to be impressed.
Right.
So all of that goes away when we simply institute blockchain.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
The entire threat landscape goes away.
Mhm.
It's like, try breaking into 20,000 computers, threat actor, to take my car, my social security number, and my green card. You're not getting in. I won't give you the keys. They're in my head.
Is
We'll just put all the
is
cybersecurity
Checkpoint
companies out of
doing?
business. Sorry,
Yeah,
Ken.
I was going to say,
Sorry, say it again.
is Checkpoint doing anything futuristic like that? On that front.
Yeah, not that I would like to share
Sure.
as far as expectation. Nothing that's coming to market,
Yeah.
very soon.
But brains are working on it.
Everybody's brains are working on blockchain because we all know there's a future there, as we just described it. Look, I will say this. I've got a friend that runs an amazing company called Lauren Forensics, and at this company, he's using blockchain in a very real world way today. Obviously, it's for anything forensic, really. And so what they do there it's great. It's very simple. When they're doing forensics on post-breach, it gets automatically sucked into the Ethereum contract,
Okay.
so that the chain of custody is intact. And this goes for police departments, this goes for anybody doing forensics, it goes for military, whatever. So you automatically just hand the key for the blockchain, right, over to whoever wants to look at it in a court of law. It's brilliant. It's a great application. So you think about forensics in the police department, you come across a road traffic accident or something nefarious, you've got to take pictures of everything and you've got to seal everything. You've got to make sure the chain of custody hasn't been tampered with from the scene of a crime. In a financial crime, right? Let's say a bank has experienced a financial crime. When you are investigating it, suck all that data out into the blockchain through this guy's product. Boom, done. So that's a great way to use blockchain. But I think with cars and our identities, you think Jamie Dimon over at Davos at the WEF, I'm holding back from making comments. He boasted that they spend $1 billion a year in cyber. $1 billion. Just their identity access management alone is $250 million.
Jesus.
Now, this is a response to what we said at the beginning of our podcast, which is your response, Tim, on all these threat actors out there. This is horrific. Well, we're paying for it because our banking fees go up, right? I mean, it's easy for Jamie Dimon to spend $1 billion. Yeah. It's our money, right? So it's like the government. That's our money. So we are paying to stop the threat actors by spending $1 billion a year. Well, does that entire problem doesn't go away with the identity access management with blockchain, but certainly we have a better experience. So actually, I think the irony is this: over time, just like with any open market system, the cost of goods and services go down.
Sure. And
life gets better. So we're going to get there. But if you think about the internet from the perspective of the printing press, 1440, Gutenberg invents the printing press. Prior to that, we lived as barbarians, right? Just murdering each other. And then 200 years later, we have the Great Renaissance. Right after the printing press, the first time in human history that the average person can learn to read and write and gain knowledge. So Newton says, if I have gone further than others, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants.
Sure.
That's what he meant, right? Other people came along. Prior to that point in history, no one could read. Then you get Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and you get America. How about that? Just from this little wooden contraption called the printing press. Well, the internet came along, right, and gave birth to this thing, which has only been 30 years. Isn't that interesting? We're still kind of figuring it out, And do you know what the most popular book was in the first while after the printing press. It wasn't what Isaac Newton would have read, that's for sure. It was How to Spot a Witch.
Yes, I actually heard that couple weeks ago. It's interesting. Yeah.
Isn't that
It was
mind-blowing, Tim? We were a bunch of
best-selling book.
superstitious, crazy people.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
How to
concerns
Spot a
me.
Witch.
Yeah.
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 Well, I mean,
That's what people wanted to read.
right. It's what do people want to read now? And, with the age of blockchain and AI, where is
Well,
everybody taking
we
you
seem
now?
to be taking pictures of our food and watching
Yeah.
kitten videos a
Right,
lot.
yeah.
You guys are right.
But I think once we grow out of that and out of the barbarism of, the new cultural wars, right? I think we eventually will move to a very peaceful environment where we understand that sovereignty for the individual is important. Blockchain solves that problem, and the majority of people are good. So let's push the threat actors back with these incredible tools that folks like you and I make.
Sure.
Right? That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Fascinating conversation, Eddie. We really appreciate your time. We know you're in high demand and speaking.
No, it's a
all the
pleasure.
time.
I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I love what my guys are doing. We're having fun here. So let's just keep doing it.
No, appreciate your
Maybe
time.
we'll have you back another time, because I still want to talk about quantum computing and the threats of that, and blockchain is always interesting. So there's more conversations to have for sure.
Yeah, quantum and encryption is really exciting right now, right?
Yeah. Yes,
We touched on that in our last
We'll hold it.
podcast, actually.
Yeah.
But that's a deeper dive in terms of where is that headed and what does that mean from a cyber threat and risk standpoint.
I might have to get a buddy from MIT on the call with me, though.
You can just Google it. Just Google it. Or better yet, go to Bing.
I'll ask ChatGPT before we do the next one.
There you go.
Well, Eddie, thanks for your time.
Right.
We appreciate our audience.
My pleasure,
And for everyone tuning in, you can check out other KiteCast episodes at kiteworks.com/KiteCast.